I've had a few questions recently about how often I change my jar that my starter lives in. And shooting from the hip, like my just quick response was, oh, like once a month. And then I started thinking about it, and the truth is, I haven't changed my jars in like 6 months. Okay, so these look ridiculously clean, right? This looks like I'm lying, right? I just started this starter and put it in this jar and it's only been a few days. No, really, I've been rolling with these for 6 months, just with these jars. So how do I keep it so clean? And I know that I see a lot of YouTube sourdough bakers and they have a jar starter and it's completely caked with starter. And it kind of breaks my heart. Maybe it's kind of my restaurant background. You know, working at Spago Beverly Hills for so many years, you clean as you go, you keep everything clean, everything's got to be immaculate. It's just the way you go to make things kind of professional and minimize the stress of the chaos of the environment. So I see that mess of caked on starter and just blows my mind and kind of breaks my heart a little bit, because all that caked on starter is actually usable starter and it's just dried onto the jar, just waiting to be brought back into the rest of the starter. So there are a couple things that I do that keep my jars so clean. First are my tools. And this little silicone spatula, I believe it's like an 8-inch silicone spatula. I'll put a link in the description. Got it on Amazon. I think it was less than $10. It has really been the main tool that has made it so my jars stay so clean. This thing's ridiculous. Get one. And then when I feed my starter and I mix it, and I'll show you, we'll do this together, I switched to using this ice cream spoon, because if you look at how tall it is, I get just enough finger and hand on it where I can stir it and, you know, kind of manipulate my starter around in the jar without having to use like a little dinner spoon and my hand doesn't fit in there, or like a chopstick or spatula, whatever. This has been a helpful tool for keeping my jar clean also. This is an essential kitchen tool. This is a 3 1/4 inch blade, serrated paring knife. Victorinox is the brand. I have 4 or 5 of these in the drawer. There's always one clean. These are great. You can do just about everything with this and a 10.5 inch chef's knife. You're kind of good to go. That's really all you need in a kitchen. Now, what do I need this for? Well, any paring knife would work for what I'm going to tell you to do. But no matter how clean my jar stays, and I wish these guys were a little bit dirtier. I was kind of waiting. I've been waiting to make this video until these guys were dirty, but they don't get dirty. They stay clean because of the way I do this. But chances are, if you're jumping into this and you're going to apply what I'm talking about, this will mean something to you. Now, when you go to get starter out of your jar to put it into your bowl to mix dough, you know, it has to come out through the lip of the jar, and starter gets kind of stuck to the lip and to the rim. All this starter that dries out, you can take your paring knife and you can scrape it off of the rim of the jar and then tap it right back into the starter. It's just dried starter. It's perfectly fine as long as it's not like black or brown or like weird and discolored. Well, unless it's like you're feeding it whole wheat, then it would be brown. But we can use this starter. It's happy to go back and you know, join the rest of the starter. So you go around, you kind of scrape the starter out of the rim and, you know, put it back into the jar. You can go around and use your paring knife to kind of like get any crusty bits off of the threaded portion of the glass, just so you can screw your lid on loose again. You know, if you get enough starter buildup, then it's like, I can't get my lid on. So that's a great way to deal with the stuff that's around the rim. I would say these are pretty clean. They've got like a little bit of buildup, but it's not enough that I can really take anything off and get a little bit, but nothing meaningful. I will put everything back in that I just took out. Okay, I have these 2 jars of starter. They each have approximately 40-ish grams of starter in them. I'm going to feed them a 1 to 2 to 2 ratio. So we're going to go 1 part starter, 2 parts flour, 2 parts water. I'm going to change the camera just so you can get a view of what happens in this jar and how these 2 tools help me keep my jar so clean. All right, I'm going to try and keep my hands out of the way. So here's the one with the green rubber band. Everything's pre-measured. I always start with water. And if you've watched any of my videos, starting your starter, you know that. Okay, so water first. Why? Because I want to bring my starter into solution It's gonna make it a little bit less of a mess, and it makes it so I can get my ice cream spoon in here and stir it and get into all the corners. So I'm kind of minimizing, the mess that happens when you go flour and water together, and it's just a fight to incorporate it. So look at that, it's already smoothed into solution, and I can put my flour in. Let's see, can I get my flour in without spilling it? Wine glasses looked pretty. Probably not the best tool, but the aesthetic, right? Okay, so I have my flour in, and I'm gonna, kind of stir it. Of course, if you're super aggressive here, you're gonna like, abracadabra, poof, it goes everywhere. And it's gonna be a thick, sticky mass. The length of the handle here makes it possible to kind of keep my hand out of the jar. I don't have the best grip on it because it is a skinny tool, and I don't have small hands, but it's totally doable. You don't have to be aggressive. You don't need to be violent. Okay, so everything's incorporated, right? I've got this sticky mass of starter in here. And you can see, like on the sides, I think, that I've got like flour bits, right? And I could just go around and scrape them with my spoon, but that's not really gonna take it off. What's gonna remove flour and starter off the side of the jar? Starter is going to do that. Let's see if I can get a good angle here. But I'm trying to take the starter onto the jar, because when I go to scrape it off with the spatula, so I'm already using the starter to kind of spread it on the jar, onto the crusty flour bits, and onto the starter that I got on the side of the jar, because it's gonna serve to remove it when I get the spatula in here. This is probably the weirdest camera angle I've tried to produce, so I hope it's not too bad. So you can see in the jar that most of the starter is spread up on the sides of the jar. And if you've watched kind of like some of my dough mixing videos, I'll do the same thing after my initial mix with the dough. I'll spread it on the sides of the bowl, and then I'll use my bowl scraper to scrape it all down, and the dough cleans the bowl. Okay. So I've left it all here on the sides of the jar. This is a mess, right? What a mess. And it's up on the sides of the jar. Now my handy little spatula gets to do its job, and I'll go around, scraping it down. And this thing fits perfect into, like, those subtle corners that are in the mason jar. Okay, what do you think? How'd that come out? Pretty clean, right? And I know that it's not perfectly clean, but you know what's gonna happen? This is gonna double and triple in volume, and then I'll scrape it down again, like when I go to mix my dough, and the jar will be even more clean after the starter has done its, fermentation process over the next 10 hours, 8 to 10 hours. Okay, so here is our starter, the one that I just fed. I scraped down the jar. I'm gonna mark the level with a rubber band so we can see how much it expands over the next, it's pretty warm today. So yeah, it'll probably be ready in, I'm gonna guess 9 or 10 hours. Lid on loose. And then I'm gonna keep it on towel, off to the side, and then we'll catch up when I'm gonna mix this, and you can see how I scrape it down and keep it clean after I remove starter from the jar. This one, I'm gonna feed it. I've got everything pre-measured, just a different angle, right? Different camera angle. I'll blow through this a little faster. So I mix my starter and my water. Smooth and creamy. Flour. And incorporate all this together. Feeding your starter should always be kind of a quick, easy process. Shouldn't take much thought. You weigh your stuff, you mix it all together, and the only thing you're changing now is once it's all mixed together, you're spreading the starter on the side of the jar where there is flour bits that are dried to the jar. And I'm not just spreading it, but you can kind of see, because I'm not trying to fight with the camera angle here, that I'm not just spreading it, but I'm kind of scraping up and down. I'm trying to use the starter to remove what's already stuck on there. And this jar will probably come out cleaner because it started a little cleaner, but I'm also not trying to fit it all into an overhead camera angle view. And the whole spreading everything around also really ensures that you've mixed everything together and there are no flour pockets or little water puddles in the bottom of your jar. All right. Get it off of my spoon. And same as the first one, let's see how we do. And if you start like way up in the shoulder of the jar, you know, you can really push a lot of the material back down to the bottom and get your jar extra clean. It's like a starter squeegee. And you know, you get some dry bits like that, it's cool because as the starter expands up the jar, we'll end up catching it later. All right, that is it. Look, easy thing, right? We're just scraping down our jar to keep our jar clean. 6 months, you can do it. You don't have to change your jar. I know, I'm so lazy, but it looks good. It's fine. Okay, lid on, loose. Mark this with the rubber band also. And here we go. We'll catch up when these are, boom, big. Okay, and we're back. It's 9 hours later and my starter has, oh no, what do you say, doubled and a half or almost tripled in volume. It's active, it's ready to go. I'm gonna mix some dough. But take a look at these jars and you can see that, you know, all the stuff, all the bits that were like still exposed on the side of the jar, now they're covered in starter again. So it's gonna be easy to scrape these down. So I'm gonna weigh out what I need into this bowl. And I'll show you how this cleans up real nice. Butterfingers. All right, so when the starter comes out of the jar, obviously we're gonna get some on the lip, but that's okay because we have that little amazing 8-inch spatula to scrape it down and keep things clean. Cool, I've got what I need. Look what's left. Just enough, just enough. Okay, I'll deal with this later because we're not doing anything with dough. We're not mixing dough. We are taking care of our jars to keep them nice and clean. So you can see I've got lots of residue on my jar just from dumping it out. And you can see kind of the water line from where it was. So now I'm gonna take my spatula, scrape all my starter down to the bottom. The way I operate, I usually don't have much starter left over, left behind maybe 30 or 40 grams. And that's all I really need, you know, to keep the party going. Okay, so that's it. Could it be more clean? Not really. I mean, I've got a little bit of that stuff that, you know, eventually you have to scrape down with a paring knife I was talking about earlier, but that is it. So now I have a beautiful clean jar, you know, for the most part. And this is how my jar ends up looking for, you know, like for the last 6 months. This is just what it looks like. And I've got a little bit in the shoulders right there. I could try and clean it up, but honestly, I never really kill myself on it. I'm just making it look nice. And then that's it. And then what you decide to do with your starter, well, how you manage your starter is your business. But now at least you can have a clean mason jar and you don't have to worry about changing your jar. Just keep it clean. Use your spatula, use your spoon when you're mixing and scraping down. Use your spatula when you take your starter out. And remember, knife for scraping the rim. And then the last thing, make sure that when you get that ice cream spoon in there and you mix your starter, spread it all over the side of the jar so your starter can collect all the dried flour and bits of starter so you can scrape it back down so your jar looks nice and clean. All right, I'm gonna mix some dough.